as you guys can tell, my project is about music and the impact and how I've used music and lived with music throughout my whole life. So as you can see, music has been something that has been with me throughout my whole life. I've always loved singing. I've always loved playing piano, learning instruments. I picked up the guitar, picked up the ukulele, and I love sharing this love with others and showing others how to play piano or singing with others, or making friends in chorus and theater and different things like that. And throughout high school, that's been no different. I've been involved with all the theater, the musical productions. I started the ukulele club, and I've used music throughout classes, and I've used it in music videos, for example, or making Spanish projects, making chemistry projects, and it's been something that's influenced me and that I've loved as a way of learning. For example, always in chemistry, I remember Mrs. Mitchell, my chemistry teacher, who's also my mentor. She would always use different chemistry songs and show us the material that we're learning in the form of a song. And I would find myself on AP tests or all the tests singing little chemistry songs in the back of my head. And just like you can remember song lyrics from songs years ago, it makes it much easier remembering different scholastic topics. So throughout this, and throughout my life, I've learned that music is a great tool for learning, and it's a great tool for making friendships and relationships. And therefore, I decided I wanted to base my project off of my love for music and what I've learned from it so far, and to continue learning how to use it as a great tool. So this project focused on the fact that music can be a great tool for learning and building relationships. So I decided I wanted to do that as a project, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to tie that into actually the physical creation of a project. So working with my mentor, I decided that I wanted to tie it in with also my love of science and tie it in with the fact that I never was able to take the anatomy class offered at the school. So working on my own, learning anatomy, we decided that I was going to learn on my own anatomy and just focus on different things that interest me and create an ending, culminating project that was going to be a music video portraying what I've learned, and it would make it easier for me to remember and learn what I learned and teach and show others. So the end product will basically be a music video that is going to be talking about the eyes, which is something that I found really interesting as part of the human anatomy. But the project itself and the idea and learning and the research all started last year. All started last year when I was in AP Psychology. Back last year during the Howard Gardner unit, we started learning about the 8 intelligences of the human. And very interestingly, it was always mentioned that music is one of those intelligences that humans have, just like verbal intelligence or mathematical intelligence or spatial kinesthetic intelligence. So I decided it's obviously recognized as an intelligence, and it's recognized as an awesome tool that humans can use in their brain. So I continued my research, and I found out for a fact that students who are part of ensembles such as band or choir tend to do better on standardized testing like SAT. In fact, they score an average of 90 points higher. So this is cool. Musicians tend to do better, and it's easier for them to learn and process new information. But then I found out that it's not only musicians. It's literally, if you can use music, if you're not a musician, to help study and learn a material. This is the reason why Mrs. Mitchell would always show us songs that portray to what we were learning in chemistry. Because if you have a tune, it's much easier to remember a little jingle than it is just a basic fact out of a textbook. That's why another fact, which was backed up by a few other sources, stated that music relevant to the study materials can help students focus and learn, which also tied into why just listening to background music, such as classical music, can help clear one's head and focus on material at hand. So if a student is listening to classical music, it can help them focus on what they're trying to study and learn and not think about other unimportant things like what they're going to have for dinner that day. But my personal favorite fact that I learned through learning, of the psychology of learning through music, is the fact that there's a scientific reason why musicians have an easier time learning and memorizing new things. Currently, it's hypothesized that musicians have a higher concentration of NR2A and NR2B proteins in their brain. Now, these are proteins that help make interneuron connections. Now, when these connections are easier to make, these are the connections that help make memories and form long-term learning. So, being that musicians have a higher concentration of these proteins, it's hypothesized that this is what allows them to learn quicker and perform better on things like SATs and have an easier time with school. So it's basically like a lifelong asset being a musician. Now, I decided to continue my research and try to find other people who have had similar situations as I have with a love and passion for music and seeing how it has helped their life. One of my favorites was a learning disabled student in an elementary school. This student really had an attention deficit problem and could never sit down and concentrate on work that his third grade teacher would have him do. He could never sit down for any extended period of time and simply wouldn't listen to his teacher. Until one day, his teacher decided to throw in a pair of headphones and have the student listen to classical music. Listening to classical music allowed the student to finally pay attention and sit down for an extended period of time to do his work. It worked wonders for the teacher, made her life a lot easier, and it finally gave him the capacity of being able to learn and feel like he was capable of doing schoolwork. Another very interesting thing that I loved was seeing how a music program helped the Beverly School for the Deaf. Originally, this school never had funding for a music program because it was never seen as an important thing for deaf children to have. However, once the school finally received enough funding for a music program, the results were outstanding. The students going here finally got to learn about something that they'd never been able to experience. They finally learned how vibrations work through instruments, and they finally learned how people communicated and learned how sound waves work just simply through music, being by other means, obviously not completely by hearing, but by touch and by vision, seeing how instruments work and stuff. Not only this, it created a better friendship among their peers, and it improved their days in other scholastic classes, which ties into my interview with Mrs. Jakes, which one of the biggest things that she talked about is, while talking to students, she realized that students in her guitar classes or band or other classes always felt that they performed better in their academic classes on the same days that they had her music classes, because music allowed them to de-stress, and it basically allowed them to get in a better mood for learning. One of the other things that I love that she talked about was how she uses music in her other classes, like music integrations. My favorite quote said that music intrigues students to pay attention better. It also allows students to make connections for better long-term memory. Now, she stated this because she talked about how she uses music just like in sophomore and junior integrations to teach different historical events. Now, most of these students may not love history, but they can connect to music and enjoy that. So tying it into something that they enjoy and is rememberable allows them to learn the material better, and actually they'll be able to remember it years from now. Where in a basic history class, they won't remember what they learned years from now because it's not like a jingle that they like or doesn't remind them of songs from the past, and it really wasn't all that interesting. Now, how did all this learning tie into my project? I decided I wanted to tie this in, and I wanted to help me learn what I was learning in my independent study, and I wanted it to make it easier to show and teach others. So that's where the music video came in, and that's what I've been working on. But one of my other favorite parts of the project was my community connection. It was a part of the project that I really never knew about until starting the class back in the end of August. And I was very scared and pushed out of my comfort zone because I wasn't expected that I needed to work with the community, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to work with the community. But in the end, I ended up working with Mrs. DiGregorio, Ms. Aubin's mom, and I gave her ukulele lessons, which was an awesome experience because she had played ukulele when she was younger, back in Hawaii, but she really hasn't played for years. When we started playing, she really wasn't able to play much. She wasn't able to hold down the strings or strum, and she felt that it was an impossible task. She didn't see herself being able to play. But now, after about 10 weeks or so of lessons, she was able to play for her granddaughter's birthday. She was able to play for her whole family on Christmas, and she's honestly been playing, she's gotten great. Now she can play a bunch of songs, and she's very proud of herself. And it shows that even though now she's a grandmother, she was still able to put her mind to work and able to learn something new. Music allowed her to expand her brain and keep using her mind every day. And it allowed for us to make a friendship. And we made a bond and a great relationship based over our mutual love of music. And also, she always made me cookies, and you can't complain about cookies. It was honestly a fun time. And I have a little sound clip attached here of us singing together and her playing ukulele. So you can see how far she's gone. So I don't know if that was like too soft if you guys couldn't hear it in the back, but it was a fun time. We played a bunch of cute songs together, and it was definitely like one of my favorite parts of the whole project. Now, the other part of the project was the physical creation. So that has entailed the independent study and has entailed brainstorming song ideas for composing the song. So here, for example, is like my beginning of like brainstorming the chords for the song. And I have another quick thing of just like something I recorded in the very beginning, which is playing the piano, like trying to come up with the chords and like a tune idea. Once the song is complete, just be sure to check it out on YouTube, and it'll be there soon. But in general, the project was a ton of fun, and it really showed that something that you love can be used in any way that you want it to be used. And you can use it to continue your lifelong learning, continue making relationships, and it's something that will be with you for your whole life. So I personally recommend music, but if you have any passion that will allow you to continue your lifelong learning and lifelong creating of relationships, I highly recommend it. Thank you. And I have a special thank you for Ms. Aubin, my teacher, Mrs. Mitchell, my mentor, Mrs. DiGregorio, and Mrs. Jakes for our interview. Thank you.